G'day, I'm Mark Fennell, and welcome to the extended edition of Download This Show here on YouTube. This is where you get to see all the stuff we cannot fit in the radio show, which of course airs on RN. And today we are talking about E3, the massive entertainment conference over in the States, plus what makes a really great product design, what makes those designs, those devices that you just want to hold in your hand. And of course, we are talking about blocking all your favourite spoilers. Let's get into it. Please let me welcome our panel this week. She is the editor-at-large for techly.com.au, Claire Porter, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
And the editor of CNet Australia, Seamus Byrne.
Hello.
All right, let's talk E3. Now, E3 is naturally one of the biggest events in the gaming calendar, but let's just say when they announce a lot of new games, new doesn't necessarily equal original, does it, Seamus?
Yes, we're seeing a lot of the classic AAA titles, as they get called, you know, the big blockbusters. That's just into kind of sequel Armageddon right now. And, you know, like Call of Duty and Halo and all these kinds of games are just wheeled out again and again. And actually, in many ways, that's been the kind of tired side of E3. But that actually, I think you're seeing that most of the fans' reaction to this show has been far more excited about some of the new ideas and the indie titles that are starting to come through. So there's been some really big, exciting options there. Like a game like No Man's Sky, right, is a game that everybody's getting excited about. 4 people are making this game, and it's the kind of crazy procedural generated game. So the idea that it's just going to on the fly create worlds.
Right, so if I've never heard of that game before, just paint a picture for me.
Okay, space dinosaurs. Right?
I'm sold. Done.
The idea, you can just go exploring these planets, fly around, and literally then you can just jump in your ship and kind of like fly off and then fly straight into space and just go looking for other worlds to explore. Like, it's massively open and it kind of is an exploration game, and everyone right now is thinking, what do you actually do? And people are saying, well, that's what we all said about Minecraft, and Minecraft went absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's cool ideas like this out there. And I think most of the cheering has been for, you know, for some of that sort of stuff. And then also like Grim Fandango, that was kind of a big surprise.
Which is a game that's been around since I was like a teenager. Is it still going, or did it disappear for a while?
That's it. Like, it was, you know, it was a one-off, one-player game, you know, back in the 90s, and now they're actually making an HD version of it for, you know, for the latest version console. But it's been so long, a lot of people never got to play it. So I think that's why a lot of people are excited. The idea of bringing it to a new generation of gamers who kind of never had that experience in the first place.
So can I expect like Leisure Suit Larry Reborn and Carmen Sandiego, the next generation next?
I would play the hell out of those games.
There have been so many attempts to bring Leisure Suit Larry back, and pretty much every time everybody goes, no, wait, this was never appropriate.
It was released as a PC game last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Carmen Sandiego, and this is going to be the most ham-fisted segue I do, Carmen Sandiego was a woman, and there's been a number of criticisms of misogyny in some of the games released this year. Claire, what's your take on that?
Misogyny in the video game industry?
I've never heard of misogyny in the video game industry before. This is the first I've heard of it.
I mean, the greatest frustration, obviously, is with the lady problems with Assassin's Creed. No chicks. No ladies, only dudes. And when confronted about it, they went, you know, we were going to create some female characters, but there was so much to do and we had these massive budgets, so we just didn't. But you've only got 9 teams working on the game. You couldn't possibly spare one to work on a lady.
Can I make one observation about Assassin's Creed? Based on everything I've seen of the game, the assassin always looks fairly effeminate anyway. It would not have taken that much effort to remove the stubble and make them a woman. Just from my point of view. Yeah,
I think this is kind of the critical issue here has been, look, like through the series, there has been some good representation of, you know, female characters. You have been able to play female assassins at different times. So I think they're trying to sort of defend this latest choice by saying, but we've done a pretty good job in the past. And everyone's saying, like,
no.
So what you're saying is it's a step backwards this time. You know, that, yes, the protagonist is a guy.
Dig up.
Yeah, seriously.
But as soon as you have a multiplayer option, and particularly we're talking about a French Revolution game, some of the great assassins and revolutionaries through that time were women. Yeah, why not try to represent them in the way people can play? And they've used the excuse saying, well, we'd have to do whole new animation models and we'd have to do all these new things, to which a lot of people have just kind of simply said, just make like a cool, you know, it's slightly different set of robes and we won't care. Like, you don't have to
rewrite the character.
Yeah, you don't have to do everything, but you just should be giving us the option to say, if it's multiplayer environment, then sometimes people want to run around as a woman.
And also produce one less side game and use that budget to create a great female character. And as much as you were saying, you know, they didn't want to have to recraft a whole character. I do think decent female representation within gaming isn't a matter of removing the stubble and adding a pair of boobs. Like, I'd really like to see some more complexity within characters, not just, hey, there's a token lady part over here, you know, she has boobs and stuff, give her a gun, she'll be fine. Like, it's not equal representation visually, it's also within the narrative of the game, and I think I'd like to see more of that.
Do some of these choices that the big gaming houses are making betray something about the demographics, betray something about the way the gaming industry is really focused at the moment? Is it really male focused? Do males not want to play female characters? What's the research behind that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of bad assumptions being made about the idea that, like, you know, as an industry, we all kind of know the statistics these days that it is, like 30-somethings, mostly guys, but actually an awful lot of women do now play. Like, we're not talking about, 80, 90% guys. So, there is kind of this balance that's there available. And as plenty of people point out, that there's so many entertainment franchises right now that have actually been, killing it with female leads. Like Frozen's the biggest Disney movie of all time, with entirely a movie about, sisterhood.
Orphan Black.
Orphan Black TV show, yes.
Yeah, so there's just so many of these things going on, but that within the games industry and the people the bosses of game studios, there seems like there's this still very much a focus on the idea of teenage boys are going to play this game, so you got to get to them in the right way, and they don't like the ladies.
So there's no track record for female-focused games that have tanked or anything like that might be spooking them from a business standpoint, which, by the way, is not to excuse it, there's no track record like that to back it up?
I mean, again, Tomb Raider is probably one of the great examples that was one of those, early, things which kind of showed that a female lead could kind of work so well. I mean, again, there was that whole discussion going, she had massive boobs and all this kind of thing. But
not to mention the rape scene.
Well, that was written by a woman. By a woman. Like Rhianna Pratchett kind of is writing all the latest Tomb Raider stuff.
So just back up for me.
Yeah.
There was rape scene in Tomb Raider.
You have to save her from sexual assault as part of the plot of the game.
Well,
Right.
that was the last Tomb Raider game. People can debate, I guess, how you build the female character in that kind of a story, but it has shown a very successful franchise can be built around the idea of a strong female lead.
Certainly, but rape as entertainment is maybe a little bit step too far.
Perhaps, but then again, there is a kind of a broader issue with rape culture appearing in a number of high-profile TV shows this year, Game of Thrones as well. Speaking of television, E3 is a very big deal for Sony, and one of the things they've launched is PlayStation TV, which is essentially, Seamus, I understand their attempt to muscle in on the Apple TV, the Chromecast market. Walk me through what PlayStation TV is going to be.
Yeah, so it was originally launched as Vita TV, and now it's being called PlayStation TV. But the idea is I think in Australia it's going to be $149, and it's just a very small little box, kind of like an Apple TV sized sort of box. But you can plug it into any TV. If you already have a PlayStation 4, you'll be able to stream your games, and play them in another room. Just using your standard PlayStation controller to control the game on that sort of remote television. But there'll also be an option to actually start playing, and I'm not sure where this will be at for worldwide launch because it's one of those game streaming services, which means, hashtag NBN, that might be kind of one of our issues. But PlayStation Now as a service is going to launch, and you'll be able to actually, just through this box, even if you don't own a PlayStation, you'll be able to actually play hundreds of old, like PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 type games streamed to your TV, which is actually pretty cool.
You could play the original Carmen Sandiego. Maybe. In terms of everything that's gone on so far with E3, what's missing? What would you, aside from obviously better female characters, what would you like to have seen that you didn't see?
Xbox kind of had the most mundane of their kind of launch events. They all hold their sort of big giant press conference, and I think Xbox was pretty flat in the sense that it was still very focused on those big name titles. And as some people have pointed out, that the indie games all kind of get put into like a montage. They just show you little clips of cool small games, but they don't even tell you what those games are. I think in that sort of sense, actually, that's where Sony did quite a good job this year of actually showing, giving real stage time to a lot of, cool small ideas. Games from guys like the guys who made Journey and Flower, their latest game got some good stage time. They also had a quirky game called Entwined that actually quite, out of the blue, they were like, and this is available right now, like tonight on your PlayStation. So, a kind of a nice reveal that isn't, and you can play this next year. It was an actual, and you can go home and play it right now. There were a few things like that were good. And I think that indie scene in general is kind of where, we want to see more of it. And I think fans are moving towards it more and more because that's where the original ideas are coming from.
I think there's been a real shift in the gaming industry away from AAA titles and more towards really funding that sort of startup-based independent game space. And I think it's been a really successful year for Sony. Between E3 last year and E3 this year, we've really started to see Sony start to take seriously the idea that it's going to be the independents that drive innovation for gaming in the future. And I think it's really exciting to see a company who has been around for so long really start to tackle a slightly different element of the industry, which until now really hasn't been given the time of funding that it deserves. And I think over the next couple of years, we're really going to see some real breakout games from the independent space. And it'll be thanks to people like Sony that it'll be able to innovate and foster such longevity.
And just before we wrap up the discussion of E3, Seamus, I know you've been wanting to say this name ever since we started the show. Which company won E3?
Nintendo. I'm going to say it.
Ooh.
Nintendo won E3 this year because this is they had a hard couple of years, but at the end of the 3 press conferences, if you asked anybody which console they felt like they most needed to buy right now, a lot of big fans actually suddenly said, I need a Wii U now. Mario Kart 8 just came out and everybody's suddenly going, yeah, okay, I need one. But then they've launched a new open world Zelda game, which looks amazing. They've launched a multiplayer shooter game, which isn't about violence. It's about spraying paint everywhere, but it looks amazing. That's called Splatoon. They've launched their Skylanders type thing called Amiibo, which basically is one of those license to print money toy selling games that you attach to games in that sort of world. Their first Japanese role-playing game for the new platform. Literally they've ticked all the boxes for anybody who's ever thought, well, this is the kind of game I want to play on a Wii or on a Nintendo console. And they basically went, here it all is. You'll finally go and buy one.
Is Mario available on other consoles as well, or is it strictly
Never.
Nintendo?
Yeah.
Because I would kill to have that game on everything. My Xbox, PlayStation, my computer. If they could make a fortune licensing it to other companies.
Can I ask, what is it about Mario? He's been one of the most enduring characters in the gaming world for my God, she's jumping up and down to answer this question. Claire, why?
It's not Mario, it's the structure of the game.
Okay.
If you're a bit of a control freak like me who's a bit OCD, there is one outcome. You have to finish the level, you have to win the race, and then you go on to the next section of the game until you win, and then you win, and then it's over. Unlike these sort of open world games which provide you with so much stuff to do that you will never possibly get through it all, or if you try to get through it all, you will never finish the game. Mario doesn't offer any of that. It's very closed world, it's very driven narrative. For control freaks like me who just want a sense of satisfaction at the end of the day, that is why people love Mario.
So it's the completest factor.
Yeah.
Right, all right. You are watching the extended online video edition of Download This Show. My name is Mark Fennell. We're in here with Claire Porter and Seamus Byrne talking about the week in technology. And if you happen to be a Game of Thrones fan, a True Blood fan, you know that being online on social media most weeknights is basically a minefield of spoilers. But now there is an app that claims to be able to filter out spoilers. The basically way it works is how, Claire?
You open the app and then you sign up, and then you basically decide whether you want it to run both across your Facebook and Twitter feed or just one or the other. And then you select the social network that you want spoilers to be removed from. Then there's basically a list of movies and TV shows that are really popular. And you just literally hit the on button to turn the shield on and say there's something about Doctor Who on your Facebook feed, that should then disappear. In theory. When I actually tested it, it didn't work that well.
What was it about it that didn't work so well?
It took a really, really long time to remove things from my feed. So I'd already preloaded a whole bunch of shows I didn't want to hear spoilers about, of which Doctor Who was one. I then used the app to browse my Facebook rather than the official Facebook app.
Yes, that's the thing. In order for it to work, you actually need to access Facebook and Twitter through the app. Frustrating, Seamus?
Very.
Look, if you are just kind of skim reading and And I guess if you are in that mode where you know that there's this window of time, classic thing here in Australia, from Monday lunchtime, through to the evening where, Game of Thrones has just been on in the States and everyone's talking about it. That window of time, you could imagine saying, okay, I'm just going to use this app to specifically kind of browse these services if I want to actually dip in at all rather than hide under a cupboard.
See, here's my issue with this is that so much, particularly with Game of Thrones, the moment it goes on air, there are hundreds of memes that don't necessarily come with the hashtag Game of Thrones. It's normally, something very specific from the show, you know nothing, Jon Snow, or something like that. Does it have the capability to keep up with all of those different phrases and that different kind of folk art that I guess gets generated by a show like that?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I think that is the fundamental problem. It's either going to set up a system where you have, crazy false positives if they try to think of every possible word that might relate to that show, or the flip side is the reality of actually having way too many, false negatives, and suddenly you're feeling overconfident. Oh, I'll just kind of get on there and have a good look around, and suddenly you realize that you've just bumped into the ultimate spoiler.
Because, they killed who?
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
It probably would help if they tagged Doctor Who as in the word Doctor Who, not DR full stop.
Oh. DR full stop?
DR full stop is
had.
literally how it's listed on the app. And then when I went into my Facebook feed, not only did it not shield any Doctor Who stuff, it brought it right up to the top of my feed. So it did eventually shield it, but it was like 15 to 30 seconds load time, by which time I've read the headline, I've read the stand first, it's too late. Your technology has just become useless.
It's not just drama shows that it has options for. It also has options for sport. Now, it's an American app, which might explain why the only sports you can actually filter out are the NFL, baseball, things like that. Do you have at least the option to go in there manually and go remove anything relating to the Geelong Cats or something like that?
It didn't seem to have customized access for specific TV shows, no. That's not to say it could very well be hidden somewhere in the settings that I haven't dug deep enough to find. So if that is possible, feel free to contact us and write in.
I mean, if you're using the right Twitter client, certainly you can set up your temporary block lists where you just have a bunch of words you want muted for a period of time. So there's kind of other tools that let you do it the manual way, which might make you a little bit more confident, because it's exactly that problem. You just don't know what words is this tool definitely trying to filter versus what isn't it going to catch. So you might as well try to roll your own if you're desperate to both be online and avoid spoilers all at the same time.
And finally here on Download This Show, what makes a great piece of technology a great product? The sort of thing you want to put on your body, in your pocket all the time. The answer is design. And we're talking about what makes really great design and technology. But I want to start by asking you, what's the device you think most needs a design overhaul?
Wearables, particularly in the realm of health.
Yep.
I don't think anything like a Fitbit or a Jawbone is going to be necessarily as useful as it could be until it really starts to paint a holistic picture of our health. That means having a standard platform that every device can read, no matter what brand that you're using, to help things like diagnostic tools, to help things like tracking your lifestyle activity, so that when you go to the doctor, he can actually look at not just what you told him since the last time you've seen him, he's actually got tracking of what you've been doing since the last time you've seen him, if there are any particular things that you've been eating or sports that you've been doing that may have contributed to a particular symptom that you may be experiencing. I think we could really help to save millions and millions of dollars in the health system by tracking in advance our health and lifestyle.
Seamus?
I'm actually going to say screens, in the sense that I actually think, we have the technology now to actually make transparent screens, right? LCD screens that you can kind of see through. Therefore you could turn Windows into,
Actual
display
Windows.
Technologies. Yeah, Windows could be running on Windows. For me, I love the idea of being able to kind of multitask, through a monitor and be able to actually see, keep an eye on other things that are going on while having essentially a head-up display for certain kinds of information. So I think that sort of stuff, it's real and it's available within commercial setups, but nobody's even come close. You always see it in like a fancy video of the future, where like a car window will have like readouts and things happening. But we're just not seeing
Star Wars. It was one of the first Star Wars movies.
So we're just not seeing anybody actually use the tech that is now available to do this. And then likewise, I think rollable screens, all these kinds of things that we're playing with. But, the monitor, I think, is a big part of why the PC itself has kind of been dying in favor of laptops and tablets and phones.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think transparent screens, bendable screens haven't necessarily made the jump into consumer space yet? Is it a battery thing? Is it a processing power thing?
Because it's impractical and a fad, and people want devices that help them in their life, that they are going to use over a number of years before replacing. And I don't think having a screen that you can roll up is necessarily enough of a pull to make people purchase it as a serious decision over a laptop or a PC.
But what about if I wrapped the wearable screen over my wrist and it became my new watch, which, by the way, if somebody wants to design and send me, I will absolutely take that.
Even with smartphones right now, being able to actually let the phone run in a mode where it kind of displays, say, just gives you the camera output as, an underlay to what you're doing. Because I think there's probably thousands of people around the world who are stepping out in front of traffic or walking into telegraph poles while they, do their thing would be thankful for actually having a bit of warning through their phone.
Let's flip it around a bit. What's the bit of physical technology, console, gaming, anything at all that you think really changed the way you approach technology that was a total game changer?
For me, I'd say MacBook Air. The first generation of the MacBook Air, everybody laughed at it, because it was thin above all else, but it was underpowered. It had like one USB port. It was, it was a big joke. The whole thing of you can fit it in a manila folder. 3 generations later, it became essentially what, Intel was then trying to get all the Windows guys to make Ultrabooks. And it was like, well, actually Apple kind of nailed it, but then they stuck with it even while everybody laughed at it, and then it became the gold standard for laptops in a lot of ways, and it's really nicely made. It's, there's nothing flimsy about it, even though it's very thin. And I think in a lot of ways, even when it first appeared, thinness as a concept, I remember at first thinking, really, is being thinner all that useful? But actually now...
Ask Kate Moss, she'll tell you.
But now that I carry one around every day, it's, there's so much more space in my bag to actually carry other things and magazines and, because it's not just a laptop that is just stuffing out my whole bag.
It was ahead of its time in many ways. For me, my phone has revolutionized the way that I work. I mean, I've gone from a very traditional sort of 9 to 5, can only communicate when I'm in front of an internet-connected device to literally being able to do my job from anywhere. And I'm starting to really, I file on my phone. I transport documents across a whole bunch of my different properties. I literally can work from anywhere, and it's been because of my phone that I can do that. So I know it's probably quite...
Phone is the tricorder. It's given us that magical thing.
Yeah, it's cliche, but it's really changed my life, and this is why I don't sleep anymore.
Claire, in your experience, has there ever been a product that was seriously let down by that final aesthetic touch? That, the technology, the thinking behind it was great, but then when it came to picking it up and holding it, it kind of was let down by that experience?
Samsung Chromebook.
Right. So for Samsung Chromebook, for people that don't know, it's an Android-powered laptop, yes?
Yes. It looks a bit like a cheap and nasty MacBook knockoff, but I suppose for a fraction of the price, maybe that's what they're after. But when you're going up against HP's Chromebook, which was released around the same time, which is just the most beautiful laptop, it just looks really crap, and it's rubbish.
One of the details you like when we're testing out laptops is, particularly as they've gotten thinner, there's still a lot of weight in that body. And one thing we often do is pick it up by one corner and just pinch it hard and kind of hold it so that the weight is kind of distributing across the body. And there's so many laptops that will kind of flex weirdly and you hear it kind of creak, and it just gives you that sense that it's not really made all that well. Whereas things like a MacBook Air and a few others that are starting to come along now, when you hold it like that, it is just rigid, and it really gives you that sense of the details were cared about to that kind of that level where there's no little gaps and weird bits in it that just feel like they're about to try to fall off.
And 2 giant Alt keys that you never use. 2 giant Alt keys.
Who needs 2 Alt keys?
Who needs one?
No, I use it. Control Alt Delete all the time. All of the time.
It's been a long time since I've used Control Alt Delete on anything.
Yeah, it's been 12 minutes since I've used it. How much research do companies put into that final aesthetic appearance, and do they put enough, do you think?
I think it varies per company.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say R&D is a really important aspect to developing devices. But I don't think you could throw out a standard number and say everyone spends $1 million each. It doesn't really work like that. I guess it just depends how marketing driven your budget is compared to hardware or software driven.
I mean, that is actually a big problem for HTC right now, right? Like they've made a couple of really beautiful phones in the last couple of years, but they have no marketing dollars right now, right? So they've put a lot of work onto the design to try to get them back into kind of the big leagues, but they just can't sell it at the moment, whereas Samsung has all the marketing dollars. But, a long time ago, Samsung did make a decision, quite specifically their leadership said, we now need to be a design-driven company. And so I think in their television design in particular, you do see Samsung really led the way of getting us away from, the big, giant, boxy kind of thing that just had a, thick bezels around the edges. Now, like, there is so little around the screen. It's just become this kind of perfect little thing that's nothing but screen. And it's a really kind of nice shift.
I think it's really interesting to see how Samsung's market perception has shifted over the last couple of years. Because I don't actually think the UX in their phones and tablets is necessarily spot on.
No, the user experience in their phones is awful. I hate it.
Particularly things like if you want to attach an image to an email, you can't do it in the Mail app. You can't do it in the photo gallery. There's a hidden menu on one of the 3 buttons on the bottom of the phone that allows you to do that. I think that's since been rectified with the latest software upgrade.
It's easier to email it to a printer, print it off, mail it to them.
Yeah, but it's been it's been at least a year, 18 months that this has been an issue. When you look at something like the Nexus 5, which is hands down the best version of Android we've ever seen.
Which is, for people that don't know, the one essentially built by Google.
It's the Google phone.
Yeah.
The Nexus 5 is the Google phone, but it's had no marketing. It's had no marketing budget at all. And arguably, if Google wants Android to compete with Apple and wants their phones to compete with Apple, it needs to come up with a high-end phone that not only looks and feels great, but actually has a really great user experience that is so easy that you can just pick it up and start to use it straight away, the same way that all mums and dads can with an iPhone. That is the only way they're going to win this war. The Nexus 5 offers the opportunity for that. It is the most beautiful, comprehensive software for mobile. It's a great phone. It feels great in your hand. And nobody even knows it's come from Google because they have zero marketing budget.
Which is weird for a company as big as Google, by the way.
This is kind of the interesting design war inside Android right now, in a sense, is, early on, the companies making Android-based phones, they kind of had to put their own layer on top because it was ugly as sin, and they needed to dress it up and make it into their own thing. And that was kind of worked. I mean, everybody had their own identity. Android has now evolved to a point where it's actually really nice when you leave it alone. But all these companies still want to put their little layer on top and still, do their thing. But yeah, their versions are actually typically now uglier than stock Android. And, it's going to be really interesting to see at what point can Google try to just say, enough's enough, you have to do it our way, or will they have to just play nice partners and ultimately let it still just roll along with dirty, ugly beasts put on top of a beautiful creature?
I think we're starting to see a move towards Google really cracking the whip. It did tell Samsung to cut it the hell out earlier this year when it came to its education tablets and phones. So I'm sure the next iterations of Samsung are going to be slightly less crap than usual.
Unfortunately, that is all we have time for here on Download This Show. Very big thank you to Claire Porter, the editor-at-large for techly.com.au, and Seamus Byrne, the editor for CNet Australia. Nice little touch there. Don't forget, if you want to leave a comment on anything you've seen in the show, leave it down below. Subscribe to Radio National here on YouTube. And of course, if you happen to be anywhere near your radio, we are on your radio on RN at 1:30 on Saturdays and 9 p.m. on Sunday nights every week. Thanks for watching another episode of Download This Show.
I don't think that anyone's expecting anything other than a giant scheme to keep people inside Apple. I'm not surprised at all.